Mr. Azopardi, you were at the protest as well. What does it tell you about the sentiment of the people, of the public reaction to the budget?
Well, first of all, the whole idea was a shambles. It was not announced. As soon as it was said, I thought this was a really, really bad idea. It's going to hit low-income families and pensioners and people on modest income harder than anybody else. And then when the Chief Minister gave that interview at lunchtime, it just showed how out of touch he was to give an illustration in defense of his own measure that he bought himself a Porsche that happens to be 10 years old. It was galling for a lot of people on modest incomes who find it hard to make ends meet. And look, when I went down to the demo just to see and talk to people about this, people were justifiably angry. And the government have done the quickest U-turn, but I put the U-turn in inverted commas because they've withdrawn the measure but say it's going to go to consultation. Our position is there should be no consultation. This measure should be dead in the water because it's a penal tax, it's unfair, and it hits people with modest income. Because what the government are giving people in terms of public sector workers or any reduction of the income tax, they're taking away with another hand. That is what is happening in this budget, and it's deeply unfair. And this measure speaks volumes about the government, their lack of planning. And if you have to ask yourself a question, if this is the kind of ill-thought measure they're coming up with, how are they handling the Brexit negotiations?
Okay, so the protest turned into something more than it was initially conceived to be. It turned into a general expression of discontent. So you've said the government's accounting for the year has just gone to show they deliberately misled the public ahead of an election. They've duped and conned them. It's very strong language. How so? How have they been duped and conned?
Well, because we said last year, we warned in 2022 the figures were not realistic. Last year we went back to Parliament and said, look, these figures are not realistic in many ways. I called the budget last year a hopeless fiction. I predicted that they would exceed expenditure, departmental expenditure, and I was rubbished in reply by the Chief Minister. We went to an election. We've now come back to Parliament, and indeed, they have exceeded departmental expenditure by 65 million. And the only reason that they're not reporting a deficit instead of a surplus is that they've not made payments that they said they would do last year. So they've massaged the figures to produce a tiny surplus, but in reality, they've done what we said they would do, which is to overspend by 65 million on departments. Now, why is this important? Because not only was this one of the misinformations, misrepresentations ahead of the election, there were several actually, but when you look at the stewardship of the economy, the public finances, this hits the bottom line. This deprives the government of financial leeway, and then this happens. They introduce ill-thought-through measures. They don't have the financial leeway to lower the burden on people at the cost of living crisis when they're seeing food price hikes every time they go to the supermarket.
Now, you spend a lot of time referring to the misinformation, the misleading. You've given a few examples of what you think, the massaging of statistics and so on. What solid examples have, because people hear this and think, well, he's his political opponent. Of course, that's what he's going to say. What solid evidence do you have that they've said one thing and done the other? What examples do you have of this misinformation?
Well, look, I gave a 2-hour speech in Parliament today. If anyone wants to go to my speech, I gave many concrete examples of very specific items in the health budget where they were either introducing notional figures or unrealistic figures, giving examples of what they'd spent in previous years and saying, look, this is not realistic. I did that also in the education department and in the care agency. So we've done a very clear and systematic analysis of the budget. We did it last year. We were proved right this year. And our view is that they're doing the same this year, that there are warning signs in this budget that show that when we come back to Parliament next year, it may be exactly the same. And that's only the financial side. I also said that they had misrepresented things, for example, on Brexit, because I said they've gone to an election. This is a State of the Nation debate, but they've gone to an election and on the 9th of September, said to people that they were 0.01% away from a Brexit deal. And that is plainly now a hopelessly false statement made just before the election to get votes.
You've said the opposition won't be supporting the appropriation bill. You've made your thoughts on that clear. The government's accused you previously of not wanting the public sector to get paid. It stands to reason that, for example, the health system needs to have its workers paid. How is the health sector, to name one, going to get money for its workers if the bill is not approved in Parliament?
Look, oppositions vote against budgets all the time. What we are not going to do is legitimise a stewardship of the public finances that we don't accept. We think that they're conducting obscure public finances. They've parked over £1 billion in a structure of companies that they themselves call a jungle of companies. They refuse to give us answers. On Friday, I asked the Chief Minister to give me an answer about what they're doing with 200 million channeled through a government-owned company. He refused to do so. We are not going to condone opaque finances. We are not going to condone lack of transparency. And we are not going to condone an administration of public finances that we think is a hopeless fiction, as it was last year. And for those reasons, we're going to vote against the budget. This is not about civil servants. This is about the political responsibility of ministers and us giving a very clear signal that we are not prepared to put up with the GSLP administration's handling of the public finances.